which comes from a Jay White. And this question is a lengthy question. And I'm glad I had Jeremy on the show because now you're not just getting my perspective, you're going to get someone else's perspective about this subject. And the question reads, "Hey Alex, I've heard you say that nostalgic movies can be good if they had a really good, compelling story and a good director attached to the movie. However, I've also heard you say that Power Rangers is not viable in theaters because the premise is always the same and the concept of Power Rangers has never changed. My question is, do you think Power Rangers can ever be a successful movie franchise now that Hasbro has the rights to the property?"
Before we jump into this one, I just want to say that you guys are indeed lucky because not only do you have two Power Rangers mega fans on this episode of the podcast, but probably two of the most well-versed and well-informed Power Rangers fans that you will ever meet. So consider yourselves lucky on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I 100% agree with what Jeremy just said. Jay, I want to thank you for your question. Now, I'm just gonna do a few backtracking in terms of content. And in December of 2019, I put out a video stating why I think a new Power Rangers movie would be a terrible idea. And I can't remember the exact episode of Ask Alex, but I had another question asking me, is Power Rangers a viable property? And I spent a good 5 or 6 minutes talking about Power Rangers. And I go into detail not only from reference from my previous video, but giving you the reason why. Now, if anyone has not seen any of that content, I will leave links in the descriptions below. But I will reiterate it for this sake because I've actually had a small group of people who believe that they think I hate the concept of Power Rangers. I'm going to set this straight right now. And if I have to answer it again, I'll answer it again. Now, here's my thing with Power Rangers, and this is anything that I have not said before. Power Rangers is a viable property when it comes to TV and merchandising. Saban, when he owned Power Rangers, I think he still owns Power Rangers now, at least the main properties of Power Rangers. He has made millions of dollars just from the TV properties and toys. Like, he has made buku money from that, if not billions of dollars. I have met the first time I met the original Power Rangers was in Pensacon in 2018. I met Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger. I met Walter Jones, the Black Ranger. I met David Yost, the Blue Ranger. I met Karen Ashley, the Yellow Ranger. And I met David Fielding, which is Zordon. I met those guys. I took pictures with those guys. I even had a good conversation with JDF for about a good 2 to 3 minutes about just the show. And I can tell you that as a fan of Power Rangers growing up, I love the show. Here is my thing with Power Rangers that I will continue to reiterate. There has been nothing about Power Rangers that raises the stakes of that property. Case in point, I pointed out in one of my videos of Ask Alex, all 3 of those movies that came out, the very first movie, the Turbo movie, and the recent 2017 movie. All those movies are different, but the concept and premise are very the same. What I mean by that is that, okay, you have teenagers who get powers. They fight bad guys. And then once the bad guys die, the bad guys get larger than life. They jump into Zords and beat them again. That has happened in every Power Rangers movie that we know of. The only difference is that I loved about the recent Power Rangers movie was the fact that you had these complicated kids who were not like straight A students who literally dealt with things. And then when they found out that they were becoming Power Rangers, a lot of them were like, nah, I don't want to do this. Because that's how teenagers will react. They didn't know how to act. They didn't know how to assume the identity of taking on all this other crap that I have in my personal life, plus being a superhero. Like, that is a complex thing for a teenager to grasp, that the world is literally in your hands and you can change it. And that's the thing that I loved about the recent Power Rangers movie that came out. However, the concept of each individual movie has been the same. I bring up the example of Batman. With a Batman movie, you don't know what you're going to get. When you look at the Nolan franchise, all three movies, the relative concept is the same in terms of how Bruce Wayne became Batman. But each individual story is completely different. The premise is different. We see Batman and his own people get turned, like people in Batman's crew turn on him. Ra's al Ghul, anybody? That he came back to kill Batman when that was the guy who trained Batman. That, and granted, in the comics it's like that, but at the same time, this is a realistic version of Batman. In The Dark Knight, you didn't know who to trust in that whole movie. If anything, you could have thought that Alfred could have been associated with the Joker, because that's how deep and dark that movie is. If you take the Batman animated series, right? Jason Todd turned on Batman. A lot of the original Robin, Dick Grayson, stopped being a superhero because he didn't like how Batman wanted to run being a superhero. Like, the complex idea of Batman is so different, where every story that we see it's a revolving door of constantly breaking the premise, constantly breaking the concept. When you look at Power Rangers, that's never been the case. Nobody in Power Rangers never turned on anybody, except for maybe you could say in the original series, the Green Ranger, he started off as evil and then he became good. That's it. That's how all those little stories start to a degree. No one in Power Rangers has died, realistically. No one in Power Rangers has literally had the struggles, either drugs or alcohol abuse or anything that's real. No one in Power Rangers has done anything outside the box of the normal concept of Power Rangers. Why is it that they have to fight enemies as Power Rangers, then hop into Megazords and fight the same person again and again and again and again and again? And if you look at it, it's the same. Now, again, this is speaking as a fan. I am a fan of Power Rangers. I stopped watching, like, I think when Jungle Theory came out, I'm not sure. But at the same time, I'm still a fan of the over nostalgic value of it. But I have proven by the number, and this is my last point. I have proven by the numbers of these movies. These movies do not do well in theaters. Power Rangers had the opportunity to do really well when it came out in 2017. And it did. And I like that movie, and it didn't do well. Do you realize that Birds of Prey, even though Birds of Prey was not that great of a movie, that movie made more money than Power Rangers?
Oh, wow.
And nobody knows who Birds of Prey is. Nobody. But people know who Power Rangers are. I guarantee there are more people who know more about Power Rangers than the Birds of Prey. And the Birds of Prey still made more money than the Power Rangers. Bruh. And I'm just saying, like, and I won't say who, but I had somebody comment on one of my videos say that, well, Power Rangers deserves another shot because it's a reliable property, and when you go to Comic Cons, they have really long lines. I went to MegaCon last year. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go this year because of this virus, but I went to MegaCon last year. MegaCon had 3 of the Rangers there. I met all 3 of them. The original cast of Back to the Future was there. So was Stephen Amell, Zachary Levi, Mike Coulter. So was the original cast of Boy Meets World. All of those lines did not compare to anything that the Power Rangers had. And what I mean by that, even Jason David Frank, the lead Green Ranger, who was there, his line was so small, I can go see him anytime compared to the original cast of Boy Meets World. And I don't even think they play reruns of that show. I don't. Like, Corey, Topanga, Sean, and Corey's brother were all there at MegaCon, had lines longer than Stephen Amell's. Like, and Stephen Amell's the Green Arrow.
That's crazy.
You see what I'm saying? So, but I've gone too long on this topic. What do you think? Do you think that Power Rangers is viable in the theaters, or am I just going out of control?
Yeah, to both. No, I'm just kidding. Jay, I really appreciate the fact that you were able to go and find videos of Alex's to point out the hypocrisy of one statement to the next. No, as you guys probably can tell by my introduction to this question, I'm not a big Power Rangers guy. I am of the age that, I feel like Power Rangers came on right after X-Men and the Saturday morning block way back in the day, like when X-Men was first running. So I would catch it. I've seen it. I know Goldar and Lord Zed and all of the, I'm familiar peripherally. But you bring up so many good points, and it's hard to argue that if it was a viable franchise for the theaters, then why wasn't it a viable franchise in the theaters? Because from all accounts, it was pretty good for a Power Rangers movie. I worked at a theater when Power Rangers, the movie, came out. And I feel like I remember it being fairly well-received and popular. It was around the same time as the Pokemon movie, which I think the first Pokemon movie actually was way bigger of a hit. But it's interesting because I do feel like there's a very dedicated fan base to Saban's Power Rangers. And if you guys haven't seen it, there's an episode of The Toys That Made Us that really goes in deep about all of this. And it's very fascinating because, like so many properties of that day, the toy rights were so integral to the entire empire that was built upon this name. And it actually goes back to Super Sentai, which is a Japanese television series where they actually use all of the fight sequences from that, and then they cut in this kind of Saved by the Bell teen element that would resonate with American audiences. So ever since the beginning, it's been a kind of hokey, silly thing that children really like, and then I think you can't help but age out of it. And there was that one cat that came along that did I can't remember what his name is right now. I think it was Ari Shankar, and he did the fan film.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. He did the rated R Power Rangers.
It's got like James Vanderbeek and Katie Sackhoff in it. I think it's very grim. It's very bleak. And to me, when I watched it, I'm like, that is not Power Rangers at all.
Exactly.
They missed the mark big time because what Power Rangers appeals to is the youthful part of all of us. That nostalgia that you so eloquently mentioned, Jay, in your question, is it really does speak to being younger and not necessarily having the same discriminate taste that you would as an adult. So how do you reconcile that? Do you go with the extreme, gory, R-rated the Green Ranger's doing meth, I swear, which is actually in it, or do you go the other direction and make it super hokey? I feel like the 2017 film kind of split the difference, and it touched on some of those things, Alex, that you mentioned as well, like overcoming adversity, real life struggle, things that connect characters to who we are as developed, more mature adults, or at least a little bit more mature adults, right? So I feel like it's a very tough thing to take these two disparate kind of tones and to meld them together in a way that's successful. The best I can come up with, this is my solution for it, is just make a feature length that is exactly the same as the show, like they did with Power Rangers, the movie, because it has to make money, because the movie would literally cost $50 to make, and the people who like the show can watch the movie. I do want to defend, though, and say if it's a kind of reductive take to say all of them are exactly the same. Granted, I haven't seen all of them. When you can say, okay, superhero origin story. Superhero starts off as a regular person who either gets involved in some sort of scientific accident or some sort of trauma, which leads them to becoming a superhero and coming to terms with the power and the responsibility that they have to go into the third act and fight an army of droids that all die when the main one gets killed or has like a blue light in the sky. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could go that way, but I'm sure for Power Rangers fans, they see a lot of the nuance that misses me. So I just want to say, if you are a fan of Power Rangers, I get it. It's just, everything can't be for everybody, and it's not something that I've ever really cared for.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree with what Jeremy just said. I genuinely agree with what he just said because, again, I as a kid, I know that Power Rangers has a special place in my heart because I used to run home, used to watch that show.
Yes.
The essence of Power Rangers that Jeremy just touched on caters to kids. And you can't help, to a degree, depending on how loyal you are to the base, you can't help but age out of it to a degree. That's not to say you're not a fan. Like, prime example, When I first met the Power Rangers in 2018, that was the first time I ever went to any form of Comic-Con. I nerded out. I was like, yo, awesome. I'm with the Green Ranger, someone I watched as a kid. Like, that in itself is amazing. And I would never take away and say, hey, no, you can't do a movie. No, you can, but do something different. Or meet somewhere in the middle. Meet somewhere in the middle, which I feel like to a degree the last movie kind of did to a degree, but meet somewhere in the middle. And again, I like to point out, just going by the facts that I laid out before in my previous videos, these movies do not do well in theaters. So when they went in the midst of them not doing well in theaters, and I had someone ask me again, hey, where a lot of fans support Power Rangers. Okay, and my question was, well, where were all the fans when the recent movie came out? Because if there were a lot of people who supported Power Rangers, and I'm with you on that, where were you when that movie came out? Because there should have been a sequel. There should have been a third movie. There should have been some form of support. And again, this is not me saying, oh, that movie should not happen. No, it should, but what are you going to do differently? That's my thing about it. But, what do you guys think? Do you think that Power Rangers is a viable property in the theaters? Do you think Hasbro deserves another shot, or deserves a shot at remaking this and changing it in a different way? Jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. And we're going to jump into the final